oratory in the MHSA handbook are as follows. 1. The oratory must be written by the student. 2. The oratory must be memorized. 3. 10 minutes is the maximum time limit with a 30-second grace period. 4. No costumes or props. And 5. The rule my coach swears is in there, but I just can't find it anywhere. Don't make your judge mad at you. Now, I have personal experience with breaking this rule, unfortunately. Last year at national qualifiers, I was feeling pretty good about the weekend until I got an 8 in semifinals. Now, this wasn't your normal bad score either. Tripped over your words or your topic was poorly explained. No, I got an 8 because the Montana leader of a major political party was one of my judges and didn't appreciate my stances too much. So that was a tough pill to swallow, but I've since learned my lesson, and I chose a topic today that's sure not to divide anyone. Police reform. Okay, yeah, I know. But honestly, this shouldn't be as divisive as a topic as it is. And I know I'm not the stereotypical person to bring this up, but change can only happen from uncomfortable conversations. And as you're going to see, change needs to be made. We need to reform how our society approaches policing to better suit our modern world. To understand why, though, we need to look at the problem facing our policing system, then delve into the cause of those issues before concluding with the solutions we can implement to fix our policing apparatus. So first, the problem. The problem is twofold, really. 1, the system asks law enforcement to do too much. And 2, a lot of people in this country, especially those who have been discriminated upon, do not trust the police. Now, this first problem may not be one many people think about, but it's one author Alex Vitale has been trying to get people to talk about since releasing his book, The End of Policing. In an interview with NPR, he said, quote, "One of the problems we're seeing here is this massive expansion in the scope of policing over the last 4 years or so. Policing is now happening in our schools. It's happening in relation to the problems of homelessness, untreated mental illness, and youth violence," end quote. Our current system asks police to do too much. Police are violence workers. They are trained to fight crime and use force when necessary, not to deal with homelessness or drug use or mental illness or suicide calls or even marriage disputes. By sending the police to do a social worker or specialist job, the system is, in effect, criminalizing these people in an attempt to lessen the impact they have on the rest of us. Now, this is not a solution that's solving a problem, it's just hiding one. We are like toddlers. Instead of really cleaning up our mess, we just hide it under the bed or in the closet so no one really sees it. But it's still there. It's just not affecting us anymore. Now, the problem is, of course, that these are living, breathing people and not plastic toys, but our system tends to treat them the same. Now, the other problem, as I said earlier, is that a large portion of the American population distrusts the police. In light of the police being overworked, it should be easier to see why you would distrust the police if the police criminalize the people you love. But that's not the only reason many don't trust the police. They're also victims of a system that's gone relatively unchanged since the 1800s. According to Time magazine, the first publicly funded police department was in Boston in 1838 with the goal of protecting property. Unfortunately, at this time, property sometimes meant people. Authors Josiah Bates and Carl Vick continue by explaining that for most of America's youth, the most prevalent form of law enforcement was what we now call slave patrols. Militant oversight over oppressed people who faced cruel and unusual punishments. Now, I'm not saying every officer is racist, but I am saying that the system was. It was born under racism and thrived under slavery and hasn't changed much since. According to the National Police Foundation, quote, "Race continues to influence how people of African descent in the United States are treated by law enforcement." So if an internal police organization can recognize that race is an issue, why can't so many in our general population? So clearly things need to change. But the only real way to find a solution is to find the root cause of the problem. It's not just the pseudo-military occupation of officers openly brandishing AK-47s and bulletproof Humvees, which admittedly does nothing to get rid of the us versus them mentality prevalent in many communities, but it's also the lack of accountability. Simply put, when officers break the very rules they're there to enforce, they face no retribution. Tamir Rice was 12. He was playing in a park with an airsoft gun, and when officers arrived, within 2 seconds, they had shot and killed the 12-year-old. Only one of those officers was fired, and not for killing a 12-year-old, but for lying on his resume. Unfortunately, this isn't an isolated incident either. Breonna Taylor, who was shot in her own home, charges against the officers blocked by a grand jury. Philando Castile, who was shot complying with an officer's instructions, officers acquitted. Rodney King, who was beaten for 3 minutes straight by police on tape. 2 of the 4 officers acquitted. The other 2 found guilty and served just 2 years. We have a systemic lack of accountability in this country. It doesn't matter if you're left or right, red or blue, donkey or elephant. That's not good enough for the land of the free. So clearly things need to change. Our system of law enforcement in this country is broken. It breeds tension and distrust. It's seemingly designed to create us versus them mentality. Cops versus minorities. Protection versus control. Right versus wrong. So what can we do? Well, it's high time we restructure the system. Now, for those of you out there who believe I'm just parroting the defund the police hashtag, consider how poorly American police actually solve crime. In a 2017 FBI report, it was revealed that 40% of all murder and manslaughter charges go uncleared. Essentially, no one was arrested or the perpetrator never caught. That's not all this report said, though. 1/2 of aggravated assaults, 1/3 of rapes and robberies, 1/5 of thefts, and just 1/10 of auto thefts and burglaries were cleared. That's not good enough. We cannot live in a system that gives people nearly as good of a chance to flip a coin and land on heads than to beat someone up and face no retribution. So even if you have fundamentally disagreed with everything I've said earlier today, that and that alone should be enough of a case to fix the system. But how though? It seems like such a big task, right? Honestly, it's not that complicated. It all comes down to training and accountability. First, training. As reported by Insider, in most states, the amount of time it takes to become a police officer is less time than it takes to become a barber or plumber. Now, nothing against plumbers, but that seems wrong, correct? How can someone learn how to protect and serve in less time than it takes to learn how to cut someone's hair? But the amount of training isn't the only problem. It's the substance, too. Right now, there's too much emphasis put on firearm training and self-defense, when in reality, this is only a small part of the actual job. A Washington Post article revealed that in 3 cities, Bethesda, Maryland, New Orleans, and Sacramento, officers spent just an average of 4% of their time on violent crime. But training means nothing if the lack of accountability isn't addressed. Even if every officer had the best, most complete, absolute training imaginable, bad apples will still remain. And if the goal really is to protect and serve, all officers need to work for that at all times. And they need to know if they break the rules, they will be held accountable. So clearly our system of law enforcement is broken. Because of overworked police, a poor relationship with many communities, and a lack of accountability, cops cannot truly protect and serve. Police reform shouldn't be the hot button topic that it is, yet here we are. And if my coach is out there, which per MHSA rules I'm not allowed to tell you if he is, hopefully I didn't break the 5th rule. Hopefully this conversation wasn't too uncomfortable, and hopefully you too can see that we need to fix the way we police in this country, because lives, both red and blue, are at stake. And if nothing changes, the problem only gets worse. Thank you.